Hello, everybody. This is Jason, and my uncle and I do a podcast. And recently, we've had some questions about how we have such a good quality sound when we live about 1,000 miles apart. So, here's one of the many ways you can create a podcast that does not cost you a lot of money. The first thing we do is that we each use computers that we already have, one of which is a newer Windows 8 PC, and the other is a 2000 Mac Mini, which is running Yosemite, so you don't really need to have a super fast or super new computer. And you'll probably notice that I'm actually working on a Windows 8 machine, but I usually work on the Mac, but it's having problems doing the screen capture with all the audio. So anyways, we also use our headphones. Mine is the Logitech B530, which costs about $35. My uncle uses the Turtle Beach PLA headset, which is just around $40. And to communicate with each other, we actually start that with a Skype call, which is free. Then we each independently record ourselves using Audacity, which is also free. The last part that you need is a website. And there are some free podcast hosting sites out there, but we have a website that was created in Joomla, and so it does cost a little bit. And on that website, we have an extension or a component for podcasts specifically for Joomla that's called Podcast Manager by BabDev, and this supports iTunes, which is what we use to distribute our podcasts. You could also use WordPress, which has a podcast plugin, or you can code the RSS feed yourself, and there's a lot of instructional videos out there that document online, and they tell you how to create your own RSS feed and all the different pieces that you need in order to get it onto iTunes. So let's go ahead and get started editing. So here we are in Audacity, and the first thing I'm going to do is import two files that I have already created, and I'm going to go to Import and Audio, and they're just going to be called Sample 1 and Sample 2, and these are two tracks, and it's actually kind of a cheesy joke that I said to myself. So this is going to be our, pretend the top one is me and the bottom one is my uncle. So this is how, after you've recorded your audio files, you'll import them in that way. And let's go ahead and listen to it originally in its original form. And it's kind of lame, but just go with it. Hello, this is Jason, and this is Jason too. So do you want to hear a joke? Sure, okay. What is brown and sticky? Inner crickets here. A stick. Ha ha. So you can see that, yes, it's lame. These sounds here was me hitting my microphone to imitate some sounds. And then right here, I just mentioned that that's where I wanted to put cricket sounds in. So as you go along when you're recording your podcast, you can just kind of put those prompts in there so you know later on where you want to add some stuff. And also you'll notice this kind of squiggly line or fuzzy line, and that's actually background noise, which a lot of it comes from humming. If you're using a laptop, a lot of times if you just unplug the power and let it run on its battery, it'll get rid of that hum. But I left it in here so I could show you how to get rid of it. I'm not sure if y'all could actually hear the hum, but just in case you could, this is how to get rid of it, because you may end up with it. We also share our files with each other on Google Drive. So after we record our own and run the cleanup on them, then we put them up on Google Drive, and whoever's editing that week pulls it down and does this part. So the first thing I'm going to do is you have to select, to do the noise reduction is what this is called. You have to select at least 1 second or so of the noise. Go to Effect, Noise Removal, Get Noise Profile, and it'll kind of analyze that. Then you can either select both or select one. I'm just going to select one whole section. That's just by clicking and dragging across. You go back to Effect, Noise Removal again, and this time you click on OK. And you see it's really cleaned that up. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this one, actually I'm going to pick this section. Since I'm on a new track, I want to have it, the noise removal, get a new profile for it, just in case something isn't perfect. I'm going to go from that right hand side. Then effect, noise removal, OK, and it cleaned it up. So now the tracks are fairly clean. They are a little bit, they've still got a few little cracks and things in there in addition to the really loud noises that I added, but for the most part they're fairly cleaned up. So let's go in here and get rid of some of these loud noises. So you'll want to highlight the area. Then I know this kind of sounds opposite to what you'd want to do, but you want to go to Amplify and change it to a -50, which is what I do. You can go less than that, but I do -50 to make sure it gets it all. When you click on OK, it's completely gone. Also, there is a little one right here, and you can just move to it with arrow keys, hold down Shift, click over it, and you'll get it. And we can do Effect, and we can do the Repeat Amplify or Control R. And believe me, that Control R comes in pretty handy when you're doing a bunch of these. And oh, we didn't quite get it, so we'll get close again. Make sure we get it. Like I said, you just use your mouse key, not your mouse keys, your arrow keys. Then you hold down the Shift and go over it. And that got it. So let's play that section again. This is Jason 2. So, do you want to hear a joke?
Sure, okay.
What is brand? Then what we want to do is, we're kind of far out at this point, so it's kind of hard to see some stuff. So we're going to zoom in on the whole thing a little bit and take out all this little extra stuff. So we're going to highlight that, and Control R does that Repeat Amplify. This little bit extra here, Control R gets rid of that. There's a little bit here, gets rid of that. And you could have also done the clicks this way as well. I just didn't. That cleans it up. And it looks pretty clean for the most part at the end. Then we can zoom back out. And mine is already pretty much synced up at this time. But if you need to move these around to sync them up more, or you'll need to move them in any case, you'll want to use the Time Shift tool right here. And what this does is it lets you move the track. And since we're going to be adding some music to this, I want to go ahead and add it to the beginning now. And once again, I'm going to do the Import, Audio, and I'm going to choose my music and click OK. And it's going to bring it in. And there it is. So what I want to do is, I'm going to move this track all the way to the top so I can see it better. I don't know, I'm kind of crazy when it comes to getting stuff in order. So it's at the top. So we're going to hear music. Then we're going to have these two tracks kind of start up, and hopefully they're still, they're lined up. So what'll happen now is you'll hear music and then you'll hear the start. So let's go ahead. Oops, I gotta click on this. And then start at the very beginning, and let's hear this. Hello, this is Jason, and this is Jason 2. Okay, it sounds pretty good. And now two other parts that I want to talk about is, what if a part is too loud? Which is definitely going to happen. Someone's going to say something really loud, or your music, like in this case, is going to be really loud. There's kind of two ways to do it. If you want to keep the whole track quieter, you can go right here to the gain and just make it quieter. And if it was too soft, you could make it louder. Let's see if that made it softer. Definitely is softer than it was. Let's put it back to, let's just put it back to there. The other is sometimes when someone starts to talk, they really talk loud that very first word. So in that case, you would use an envelope tool so you could change the uh, amount of sound that's coming out of their mouth or change the volume. What this does is it puts little points, and you just click these points all around the area you want. And you might want to have a couple, because if this is at the beginning, so it doesn't really matter. But if it was in the middle, you'd want to put 2 points like here. So if I want to pull this down, it'll actually make it quieter. But then it'll get loud again here. So if you were doing that, let's say here, you'd do the 2 points, and then adjust it there. Then let's hear it and see how it sounds. Hello, this is Jason, and this is Jason. So you can see that it's a little bit quieter. I'm going to undo that because I don't want it quieter, because I think it's all right. The next part that I wanted to show you is how to add effects. And it's basically the same as adding the music, only it's in the middle. So I'm going to, I'm just going to, I'll just make it small, and I'm going to scoot these up a little bit, because these two effects are going to take up a lot of, they're going to add more tracks. So we're going to import some more audio files, and this time we're going to do crickets that go at the in the middle, and applause that goes at the end whenever my joke, because it's so funny. So it put both of those on there. Crickets here is a single, it's mono, and the applause comes in stereo. So the first thing I want to do is split the stereo tracks, because you don't always need it, and it does take up a lot of space. Then I'm going to select this and move it up to that track, so I can keep everything on the same track. And you can rename this track to like effects or whatever. I'm just doing this to keep it kind of cleaned up. And you can also add them right in the middle of them. If you want to split them, you can. So this is my cricket sound. And I remember about right here is where I said I wanted those crickets to be. So let's push play here. And sticky. Inner crickets here. You hear my cricket sound?
A stick.
But if you notice, the crickets aren't done by the time I say, a stick. And I also need to clear that out. So I'm going to scoot this up some and zoom in. And I know this is where the crickets go, so I'm going to select this. Once again, do my effect, amplify. So get rid of me saying it, but I don't want to talk over it. And this could also happen like if you and the other person kind of mess up or whatever. This is going to be splitting these tracks. So it'll kind of let you know how that happens as well. And you go to edit, clip boundaries. Well, first you put your cursor or marker here where you want to split the track at. Edit, clip boundaries, and split. And you'll see a little split appeared. And then you want to go right below it, and it'll turn yellow if you're right on it. And that's what you want to do, especially if you synced them up in the beginning. That's why I usually put all the music and stuff at the beginning and then move through it. Otherwise, you could get your timing off. I'm going to do another clip. And then I'm going to go to this and move it to the end of the crickets. So now I'll tell the joke. I'll say what? And then the crickets will play. And then I'll come in with a stick. And then the ha-ha was a little bit long. Took a little long to come in. So I want it to happen a little sooner. And this is also my next effect, which is going to be the crowd cheering. So let's zoom out. And so now we have everything in here so far except for the ending music, which if you want to copy the music from the same music from the beginning to the end, you can of course choose the right tool, select it, edit, copy, and then go to where you want to put it at towards the end. And there's your music for the end. And of course, if you have a different music, then you could, put it in there at a later, import it, scoot it up, do the same thing. So this should be the whole entire thing now, all cleaned up and ready to go. So let's hear it from the beginning. Hello, this is Jason, and this is Jason too. So, do you want to hear a joke? Sure, okay. What is brown and sticky? A stick. Ha ha. Okay, so that is pretty much the master file here of your podcast or whatever, your audio file ready to go. The next part you want to do is export it. So here, now you could also save it as a project file and continue to mess with it later, but you would just do save project, it saves it, and you can open it up again. But if you want to export it to play like on iTunes or as a podcast, you would do export audio. And we're using MP3 because we had problems with the other format, so we just went ahead with MP3. I'm just going to name it Joke Podcast. It says it's going to mix everything to a mono channel. In my case, this is fine because it sounds fine. You can put all the information in here at this time. You click OK. It does it. Obviously, a podcast would take a little longer. Let me open the directory that it's in. And here is my MP3. And we'll see if it opens. And there it's opening and playing. Make sure. Hello, this is Jason. Yep, that's it. Then we just upload the MP3 to the website and add it to our feed, and that's all there is to it.